A chance encounter results in a wanted man kidnapping a woman on her way to participate in a road race near the Mexican border, where he ends up using that as his means of escaping the law in the 1954 film The Fast and the Furious. No, I didn't get the date wrong. That's the movie we'll be watching this week on Movie Bones.
Murder, that's what it is.
You could say that again.
Murder.
If she's talking about my patience, then I think she's absolutely 100% correct, Ryan. This film is murder in that context.
This film is, weirdly enough, exactly what I thought it was going to be, and so much more.
So much more, really? Okay. Because I had about no expectations going into this. You know,
I had zero expectations myself.
I mean, even in the story, because like I've only, and I've told you guys last week, I have not seen any of the Fast and Furious films going all, from any of the Vin Diesel stuff. And so I don't even, you filled in a little bit of my, I guess my knowledge gap in that, Ryan, last week, just by giving a very quick synopsis of the overall arcing idea. But it didn't actually help me in this, going into this, because it's like, I don't see any kind of like, it feels very much like this is a guy-girl flick. It's like this is not star-crossed lovers, but it's like two people who shouldn't be together and probably still shouldn't be together, but they end up together at the end, right? That's basically what you're dealing with. And they throw in some cars, chases and stuff like that.
So I want to make this clear. When I found this movie, I chuckled because I went, no way. Because I didn't even know it existed until I was looking up movies to watch. And I came across it and I went, there's no way. Because my first thought was, sometimes movies will be remakes of old movies and you'll just never know about it. Because they'll never tell you, or they have no reason to tell you. And the Fast and the Furious franchise that is out today is so far into this it's really male soap opera melodrama stuff, even if with all this action and stuff, but it's really male centric. That doesn't mean that females can't watch it or anything like that, but it's pushed towards males, but it's male soap operas. Males like soap operas. We act like we don't, but we do like soap operas in our own way. Wrestling would not be a thing today if we didn't yearn for a soap opera every now and then. Anyways, so I'm scrolling through and I find this movie and I chuckle because I went, just no way. And I went to look it up and I went, no way. Because they did take the name, they got the rights for the name from the original movie, from the first movie, the one that we're talking about today, so that they could produce these movies. And there's
the new ones, yeah.
Yeah, the new ones. And there's, but they didn't watch the movie or any, it's like they didn't take any of the story. And then I watched this movie and I went, you cannot tell me, I'm not kidding you folks. I was like, you cannot tell me that they can modernize this particular story and it would be a hit. I'm not kidding you when I say this. It would be a hit in the Fast and the Furious franchise. And I will tell you this much. I'm going to keep going just for a little second longer.
Sure.
I am convinced that they watched this movie and they took bits and pieces out of it because the two align just enough in certain ways that I'm like, yeah, they totally watched this movie. They had to watch this movie, and they use that in their writing of the Fast and Furious movies.
I, for sure, and I think our audience too, would love to hear more about that. But let's talk about for a second, let's take a step back and just to recap. The setup for the movie is that you have a woman on her way. She's a race car driver. She drives a Jaguar, and she's registered in an official race. She's on her way to the race, and I guess somewhere in Southern California, close to the Mexico border. And on the way, she stops at this kind of, roadside diner. And while she's there, a scuffle breaks out between this guy who's suspected of murder, happens to just be at the diner, and a random person who suspects the guy is the guy who is accused of this murder thing and has escaped from prison. And he decides to take it upon himself to do vigilante investigation, provokes the guy, they get into a fight, and the guy gets knocked out. That is the one who's trying to, accuse him of being the guy, the murderer. And she gets taken hostage for reasons. Again, I'm not sure why exactly, but she gets taken hostage. And and it's one of those situations where these two who have very, who obviously have no interest or should have no interest in being any kind of an item with each other are going to be by the end of the film. And through the course of that, you have them going to the race. And it gets muddled, too, because I'm not quite sure. It kind of loses its track of itself. Are they trying to get to Mexico? Are they trying to win the race? Because at different points, I could have answered that differently. And I'm like, did the movie forget? When I'm writing the synopsis for these shows, by the way, it makes it difficult for me to write the intros because I'm trying to give a good encapsulation of whatever it is we're just looking at. And it's like, well, how do I even do it? I don't even know what their motivation is, And so that left me a bit hamstrung.
I would have personally guessed they probably took something out of the movie, with the editing and stuff. But if I was to make an educated guess or this is what they should have done guess anyways, that likely what the story was going to be about or should have been about is, they're going to go to Mexico, but they've got to do the race first. And the reason why they got to do the race first is because she's going with him to Mexico no matter what. And if she does the race, then if she skips the race, then people will be suspicious of her skipping the race.
Okay.
That's probably what should have happened. Does that happen? No.
No. There are all kinds of things I could see where you might be able to kind of make this work. I mean, the idea that he's accused of a crime, that he's not guilty of. Okay, we've seen stuff like that before. The Fugitive, great example, right? There's no romance in The Fugitive per se. But when it comes to like a movie where you're trying to have these two end up, it's like it is possible. But you do have to have your characters do have to have certain characteristics that make that possible. Because the way they have it here is like they just told him to be the biggest jerk possible. The movie wants you to think he's going to be the quote-unquote, the good guy having a bad week. And that's a little bit exaggerated because going to prison, escaping from prison, and being accused of something you're not is more than just having what I would call a bad week. But it's basically a good guy having or going through a really bad time. But when the movie plays it with the characterizations, it more or less comes off like genuinely bad dude who wasn't guilty of the particular thing he was accused of, but still a bad dude and you wouldn't want to hang around with him. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, which is actually kind of funny that you bring that up because her whole position on, he should just turn himself in and tell the truth. And you're like, I think he did tell the truth and they just didn't listen to him.
It sounds like he's saying that now he is cynical and jaded about and maybe he's coming from a place like that's where the system is rigged against him. But it's like there are appeals courts and stuff, aren't there, dude? I mean, I've heard of people can go through entire systems and end up getting convicted of something falsely, but it just didn't work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It just didn't work. I would never believe these two would end up as a couple.
I hate you.
Just hate me all the way to Mexico.
I not only hate you, I dislike you.
I always did have trouble making friends.
You're conceited, ruthless, cruel.
Well, at the moment, the only thing I have against you is I never got that egg salad sandwich.
Suppose the starter's accusing his wife of not packing a lunch.
Frank!
Quite a turnaround, huh?
Well, sometimes our issues really just come down to being hangry.
I like myself a good egg sandwich. I will not deny that. I like myself a good egg salad sandwich. I'm a bit of a sucker that way. But I think I would draw the line at actually dating someone just because, I'm not going to date you because you got me an egg salad sandwich, let alone someone who just kidnapped me,
There's a show out there that some people might know this reference to. I can deal with kidnapping, but I'll draw the line at you not giving me an egg salad or an egg sandwich. And then that's a clip from a show, and the actual clip is, I can deal with racism, but I'll draw the line at you being mean to animals. And there's a person in the background, person of color, who says, you can deal with racism. And clearly because it's a white person that's saying that.
Yeah.
Everything. But I mean, yeah, that's what it's like. It's like, okay, I can deal with you kidnapping me, but I'll draw the line at you not feeding me.
So enthusiastic, though. My goodness. And it goes back and forth, too. And that's the other thing. It's like you get into a place where she loves him and then she hates him. And he loves her or kind of likes her and then she hates him. And at no point do you feel like anything substantial has changed to make those things happen. It's like I never believed the flip-flopping, the back and forth. It's more obligatory than anything else.
Yeah. Well, and that's, again, that comes down to writing and things like that. Like, when we don't find out about his actual situation, even though we could probably guess that he's somehow innocent in everything he does, because, he's playing the part of good guy. And a lot of these movies aren't going to take the risk of actually making him the bad guy. If they did want to do that, who would do that? Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes, he would do that. He would do that.
He would have done that whole way, and it would have been amazing. In fact, you almost want him to get his hands on this kind of stuff at some point. But anyways, this movie, if they would have told us kind of like at the get-go, and then also, we find out that this whole issue, not just the cops are after him, but he's got trucker enemies, and they don't show up. Like, there's none of those people are in the movie, and that would have been a really good antagonist.
Well, I mean, yes, a more understandable antagonist than we've seen movies like that, Yeah. And it can be done well. It goes to show you that there's a fine line between, a good story and a really bad one, and because all it takes is not forgetting key things. Sometimes you just have to sit on a certain idea a little bit longer to figure out what's going to make this, work in a believable way, as opposed to just throwing stuff at the wall, either because, plot demands it or for other basically, just very rote reasons. Nothing really, nothing that you can feel. What you said made me think, because it's like if someone else like Alfred Hitchcock had made the film. Do you know who produced this film? Not directed, but produced it? Roger Corman. There's a name that we're recently familiar with on Movie Bones. I did not plan this. I did not know when obviously, because you picked the movie originally, and I just said, "Oh, okay, well, I'm curious about it." And sure enough, all roads go back to Roger Corman. How is this possible? In fact, not only that, but this is the movie. Apparently, I looked it up. It was his second time as producer. It's still very early in his Hollywood career, so to speak, and it's only second production. But he did a little bit of a stint doing the second. They call second units on a production, where he had to do a little bit of the directing himself. And he liked that so much, apparently, that he decided to go more heavily into directing. And the rest, as we know, is history. This movie.
This is Roger Corman's world. We're just living in it.
I know. It's like, what else did he do? He died actually only a year or two ago, I think, actually. How much of an impact did he have over all those years? So I thought that was a nice little link. But
that is so funny.
Guess you hadn't heard. They had a meeting last night. This course is too dangerous. All lady drivers are banned.
But I've got to.
I'm sorry, but that's what they decided.
Look, folks, we're not folks that are going to play into stereotypes, but we're coming from a world, and we're still kind of in a world where women driving is a stigma.
Wow. Because are there women? I don't follow NASCAR at all. But
actually, yes. I think Danica Patrick's one of them. I don't know if there's anybody else currently, because I don't follow it myself. Mm-hmm. But I do know Danica Patrick. I hope I said her name correctly. She was a fantastic driver. I don't know if she's still doing it or if she's kind of retired from it. But I mean, yeah, there are women drivers out there. Okay. Maybe not as popular as NASCAR, but there are women drivers, and they hold their own. They can hold their own in races. The ones I've seen. Yeah, so. I mean,
yeah, it's one of the times in the movie. It's like we've seen sexism in these movies before, but to actually have one become actually a plot point, to be able to get the guy, that she needs him for that role as a driver, because this was an unforeseeable thing, apparently. That, first of all, sexist to think that just because she's a woman, she couldn't handle it. Of course, you've got that. But even taking that aside, and that's a big, is like you couldn't have foreseen this, before people started showing up to race. It just feels like the word plot point is hanging over this.
And it's a weak plot point. And it's not because of a stigma of a woman racing. It's actually kind of maybe it is because of the stigma.
Yeah,
but, but the issue is that all of the fellow male drivers, they let you know pretty quickly, like, they're not on board with it. They think that she can do it.
Yeah.
In fact, spoiler alert, folks, there's like a whole part, the race is going on, and there's this whole part where she takes over someone else's vehicle, and then this is a bit ridiculous, but she gets right up to where his car is, where her car is that he's driving. And you know they do it for... Yeah, they do it for, dramatic purposes, but it's showing like, oh, she really is a good driver and everything. But it's almost like because of all of her fellow male drivers, like the ones that she would be racing against, are on board with it, you'd almost think that, like, in a realistic world scenario, the governing body would just be like, okay, she can totally do it, since everyone seems to be okay with her doing it. And they very much are okay with her doing it.
Yeah, yeah. It just, the idea had popped in my head that it's like, it does seem to be that they're, like, the plot demanded that she was able to catch up. It shows her as capable. And it even shows, like, one of the other drivers at least, saying that it was not fair or not right. And I forgot about that part. So thanks for reminding me about that.
I don't know. You could probably done this in a different way, like all of this in just a completely different way, and made it just a little bit better, and whatnot. But it is what it is. It's a movie made in the 50s, so
yeah, it is.
If we want to change it, we'll make it a Fast and the Furious movie today.
I mean, I am seriously done. There's another thing that happens. It happens between the two of them earlier on in the film, where he does the thing that I hate. There's a trope of the dangerous guy forcing a kiss on the female victim. That despite every reason not to, it's like, it's like, it just added that one extra little bit of his, like, hate toward the male character. It's like they didn't have to make him that bad. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like he was already being an angry jerk, but that just kind of, and that's a bit of a sexist trope too. So we had the dangerous guy forcing a kiss, and in the back of your head, that's the era this is coming from. You know where this is going to end up. But it just makes you hate it that much more, because it's like he's already taken her hostage, and now he's done this to her, Anyone with 2 cents worth of sense and self-respect wouldn't fall for someone like that. And she's supposed to be, and she is portrayed in other places as strong and smart woman. And it's played by Dorothy Malone, the actress.
Oh, man. There's that last, like, little scene before she actually gets back to the race that made me annoyed.
What was that? Because was it the one where she gets locked up in the shed?
Yeah, it was when she gets locked up.
Yeah, that bothered us too. Yeah.
I was bothered that she set the place on fire.
Yeah, I mean, what's your long-term plan there? Because I could think it's like if the place isn't on fire, you have more time to think of a way out, especially because I noticed the hinges were really on kind of weakly. She probably could have just taken the hinges off the door. And it's like, but now I'm going to put myself in a situation where I have minutes to live to figure out how to get out of here. If no one happens to see, of course, the smoke that I'm hoping someone's going to see. And of course someone sees it because movie, right? Okay,
well, see, all right, here's my issue. And it's not just with that. It's the writing itself. We've had movies like last week's movies, The War Between the Planets.
Yeah.
And everything. We watched that movie and we both came away from it. We knew it was a bad movie. And we knew that it was discombobulated. But we could also see where they might have been trying more and actually, like, thinking about some of the stuff they were doing. Mm-hmm. Even if it didn't work out at all. But, like, in this movie, I don't want to call it like throwing stuff against the wall and just seeing what sticks. But this movie, it doesn't think itself through. You know what I mean?
No, it doesn't.
Like, everyone seems to be okay with her driving a car except the people that are running it. Okay, It doesn't think itself through because everyone that's racing with her thinks it's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, she needs a way out of this shed thing. And, okay, well, she's decided that she's going to set it on fire. That's not thinking it through. Like,
no.
And that's not, I'm not talking about the character. I'm talking about the writers. And it's just like, okay, we need this to happen so that this can happen.
Right.
And it's not, this happens, and because this happens, this will happen. Like, this affects this. It's just, we need this to happen so that this can happen. And you're sitting there going, that's a bad way of looking at everything.
Yeah, and I think that translates to me. What you said makes perfect sense. In an ordinary story, you would see that. And if you take a step back from that, I think there's that kind of carelessness in attention to those kind of details. Also, is kind of a lack of passion, really, coming from the writers. It's like you didn't really care about it enough to make sense. And it's like, because the actors are doing it, they're trying to do their part. I'm not saying they're like completely flat. They show emotion. Usually it's monotone, but it is an emotion, or it's flipped from 100 to 0, back and forth.
I'm kind of done giving like certain things excuses, and maybe this sounds like an excuse for it, but it's really not. because I still think if you care about something, you should work on it to the best of your ability and everything. Like, for instance, I'm going to give him a shout out right now for our audience. Like, I care about this, but, Justin works on this way more than I do and everything. And he's constantly bringing ideas to the table. Like, hey, should we try this? We should do this. And I say that because, like, in old Hollywood, I know that there's like this penchant, and I know it happens today too in a lot of things, but there's like this thing like, okay, we have this long to film the movie. We have this long to get the movie started and everything. And I know that might affect writing. I understand that might affect writing. But still, I know you have so long before you have to start shooting a movie, or else, bad things will happen. Like you'll lose things, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But you should care about your writing. You should not make it so discombobulated that it's, you're watching, the people that are watching are going, these are just a bunch of scenes thrown together with a sort of coherent thing. But other than that, it's just like...
you feel adrift and lost.
Yeah, you feel adrift and lost, and it makes it so disjointed that you're coming away from it going, I don't really have a reason to watch this movie ever again, other than the fact that it shares a name with another movie series that I like.
Yeah. When it comes to Corman, I think if we end up watching any more of his, and I'm sure we will, because he was prolific, but the way he could get that way is because of his very quick turnarounds, and he'd be finishing one movie to help finance his next movie, or even one that he hadn't finished yet, as we could tell, like with The Terror, right? Yeah. It was theorized that he couldn't finish The Terror because he didn't have enough funds to, so he had to go off and work on another movie to fund the one that he hadn't finished. And that ended up being his longest project because I guess maybe he learned something from that too. But the idea of turning around so quickly that you don't even have like a fully fledged idea yet before you're actually starting to film the thing, and it can produce gems sometimes. It can produce absolute, lots of nuke the fridges everywhere. It can do that. It can also produce movies like this, which I think it's about, we're getting almost to the point now where I think we're going to actually have to start talking about final verdicts. So where do you come in this?
Yeah, I'm squarely in the don't look at it stage because, like, there's some neat things about this movie, but at the same time, it's just so, like, again, it's this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and I'm not a fan of that. I want this happens, and because this happens, this happens. I don't feel like this movie does that. I mean, there are some parts maybe it does that, but it's mostly just like, like, for instance, the very beginning of the movie, we're just kind of thrusting our characters into this whole situation. So I'm very much with don't look at it.
The flaws, for the most part, aren't endearing. And there are a few of them that actually had me on the verge of kill it with fire. But since the moments were relatively brief compared to something like what we watched with Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, I kind of relented on that a bit. So I really want to reserve that one for the ones that, like, break glass in case of emergency kind of situations.
Yeah.
When it wasn't quite there yet. So anyway, folks, now's the time when we like to remind the listening audience out there that if you're having a good time watching these movies alongside us and hearing our reactions, please do like, subscribe, comment, and of course, follow us on your podcast purveyor of choice. Tell us what you think we got wrong. Maybe nominate some films you'd like to see us do, if they're available for free on Tubi or Internet Archive, for example. And on that note, Ryan, what is next week's film?
Next week's film's like a film that I've seen in other places, but I could be wrong. It could just share a name again. But next week's film is about a professor obsessed with the subject of a portrait of a woman and is plunged into a nightmarish world of blackmail and murder. This movie is starring Joan Bennett, Raymond Massey, and Edward G. Robinson, and is directed by Fritz Lang, who I think we've watched before. I do recognize that name.
You remember which movie we watched?
I don't remember offhand.
Metropolis.
Oh, that was it, Metropolis. Okay, so I'm very much excited about this now. But this movie is The Woman in the Window.
I'm looking forward to that, too. So I guess that's about it, folks. So until next week, Ryan, I'll see you next week. And folks out there, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wait a minute. Here comes Dennis Maxwell.